Hey YouTube, Jim here. Welcome to Top 10 Archive. The Chernobyl nuclear disaster of 1986 was one of the worst the world has ever seen. 50 tons of radioactive materials spread across the area, even entering neighboring Belarus. While 4,000 lost their lives in the immediate aftermath, thousands more would be affected later. Mass evacuations turned cities like Pripyat into abandoned ghost towns. Which makes us wonder, what does the area look like today? Here are the top 10 most haunting images from Chernobyl. Number 10. The remains of the number 4 reactor. This is an image of the number 4 reactor that was destroyed in the Chernobyl explosion. Investigators later found how the accident was largely due to a flawed reactor design. As if that wasn't negligence enough, it was also operated by untrained personnel. Built-up steam that created excessive pressure resulted in a massive explosion, leading to fires that released 5% of the radioactive core into the environment. That 5% was enough to kill 31 people and displace 350,000 people from their homes. For years after the disaster, people suffered the effects of radiation in ways we can't even calculate or imagine. Number 9. Lead sheets as protection. In the aftermath of the disaster, robots from West Germany, Japan, and Russia were pressed into service to clear the radioactive debris, with surprisingly little success. The machines could not cope with the high levels of radiation, so human reservists were put into action instead. People we now know and praise as Chernobyl liquidators. The radiation was so great that workers could not remain in the area longer than 40 seconds. If they did, they would be exposed to the maximum dose of radiation a human should receive in their entire life. Moreover, due to a lack of clothing, they were made to use thick lead sheets worn under their cotton overalls that were designed to protect their spine and bone marrow. In this picture, liquidators can be seen putting on their gear, preparing for a cleaning shift. Number 8. The Bridge of Death. When reactor number 4 exploded, several people allegedly flocked to this railway bridge located just outside the city to get a better view of the ongoing fire and the beautiful rainbow-colored flames, a phenomenon caused by the burning graphite core. According to the HBO show Chernobyl, nearly everyone on that bridge died that night. However, there's no credible evidence to prove such an event occurred. Still, it's a very eerie vantage point that a few people were at during the explosion. Number 7. Nursery in Pripyat. Particularly haunting among images of Chernobyl was the abandoned and eerie ghost town-like appearance of Pripyat. Pripyat was a model Soviet city with a growing population of 50,000 people, several of whom worked in the power plant. The entire city was evacuated after the meltdown and quickly abandoned. Years after the Chernobyl disaster, Pripyat remains a ghost town, and these are just a few of the eerie images that prove it. Rusted beds and carnival rides, rotting dolls, and moss reclaiming the city are just a few of the common things you'll see. Number 6. A central square in Pripyat. This is an image of a deserted central square of Pripyat taken on April 5, 2017, 31 years after the Chernobyl disaster. While Pripyat and Chernobyl have been deemed safe to visit since 2010, tourists have to be screened and checked for radiation levels after leaving. And if you ever think of visiting Pripyat, you are advised never to touch anything in case you get exposed to radiation, and to be especially careful not to step on any moss. Today, Pripyat is used as a laboratory to study the fallout pattern. Weirdly, though, around 1,000 residents returned unofficially to live within the declared contaminated zones within weeks of the disaster. Of those, about 100 are alive today. Number 5. Birth defects. One of the worst results of the Chernobyl disaster was the after effects that caused thousands of cases of thyroid cancer and birth defects in babies born as far as Kiev, like the one you're seeing in this photograph. Even though citizens of Kiev were warned to keep windows closed and advised frequent bathing, It didn't prevent babies from being born with weird defects and abnormalities. UNICEF reported in 2010 that roughly 20% of babies in Belarus also suffered chronic illnesses, neurological defects, heart conditions, and disabilities as a result of the radiation leak that even swept across borders. Number 4. Vasily, 15 years old. This is Vasily from Belarus, and he's currently 20 years old as of 2021. It has been more than 3 decades since Chernobyl, but the after effects are still as vivid as ever in the likes of children like Vasily. Since 1986, in Ukraine alone, there has been a 200% increase in birth defects and a 250% increase in birth deformities. Like Vasily, another child who made the news was Igor Pavlovits from Belarus, who was born in 1987. His mother, who lived in a village near Chernobyl, became ill from radiation poisoning while pregnant, resulting in Igor being born with stunted legs, no right arm, and turned-out feet like Vasily. The most common deformity, however, turned out to be microcephaly, where children were born with abnormally large heads. Number 3. 2-year-old Nastya awaits for treatment. This is 2-year-old Nastya Dolgovovets from Selets village in Minsk, Belarus. This photo of Nastya was taken on August 16, 1996, 10 years after the disaster, and shows her sitting on a bed at the Children's Division of the Oncology Research Institute in Minsk. She has iodine marks on her forehead to cover up spots that began appearing on her body. The fire at the Chernobyl plant also sent 50 tons of radioactive fallout across neighboring Belarus. At the time, the government even denied the accident for days, an act which led to people in the Gomel region of Belarus living in radiation. Number 2. Mutated wildlife. The Red Forest in Ukraine is one of the most contaminated areas in the world, but surprisingly has also turned out a favorable habitat for some of the world's most endangered species. But that doesn't mean animals were not affected in the aftermath of Chernobyl. The disaster killed all the trees within the zone, which were bulldozed and buried in post-disaster operations. However, several animals began giving birth to deformed young, like this colt here, which was given the nickname the Gorbachev colt. This life-sized photo of the colt was taken to the Supreme Soviet in 1988 and shown to President Mikhail Gorbachev so he'd know what was happening to the country's wildlife. Number 1. The elephant's foot. One of the most haunting images of Chernobyl is the deadly elephant's foot, discovered by researchers in 1986, and today is the most dangerous radioactive waste in the world. It is a mass of melted concrete, core shielding, and sand mixed together and named corium. At the time it was found to be melting, it was too hot to approach. The temperatures recorded ranged from 1,660 to 2,600 degrees Celsius or 3,020 degrees to 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which melted reactor rods. As of now, spending just 30 seconds around the foot will result in dizziness and fatigue. 2 minutes and your cells will begin to hemorrhage. In 5 minutes, you'll be dead. After more than 30 years, it still remains slightly warmer than its climate due to nuclear decay, and it will be centuries before it's considered safe to be around. Thanks for watching. What do you think? Should nuclear power still be considered for modern-day use to produce electricity? Do you think more disasters like Chernobyl are possible in the future? Let us know in the comments. Be sure to subscribe, click the bell, and give this video a like before you go on to watch more Top 10 Archive videos like these two.